Hi guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this week's ukulele lesson, we're going to be learning Wonder Part 2. So a couple months ago, I released the original Wonder, which I guess we can call it Part 1. But if you've watched my lessons for a while, you know that from time to time, I like to create lessons that share songwriting tips and approaches that I use for my own songwriting. And I thought this week's lesson would be a great way to share another idea. So recently we did 2 other songs that had songwriting tips and approaches that you can try for your own writing. The first one was this blues tune, which used a really cool approach for songwriting. And then we had a classical tune that used a completely different approach for songwriting. And then we have this week's lesson, Wonder Part 2, which again uses a different approach for songwriting. So if you're into songwriting or arranging, then I'll put links to those 2 lessons in the description box below. Be sure to check them out and have fun with those approaches. But as far as this song, first be sure to check out and listen to Wonder Part 1. That way you have a context of how it sounds compared to Wonder Part 2. But if you've done so, and you know what both of them sound like now, let's talk a little bit about how this song is a continuation of the first tune. So one way that you guys can approach songwriting is to take a song that you've already written and use that as the foundation for writing another song. Now that doesn't mean you're going to copy and paste or write a song that has the exact same format, same rhythmic fill, or any of that. It's not copy paste, but it's instead pull aspects from one song and use that as elements to create a continuation of that kind of general theme. So if we think of Wonder Part 1, that song had a very playful A melody, very catchy, and sounds a little bit like this. Right, so just a really da 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 ba 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 da 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 ba ba ba, a very catchy melody. But the first thing you notice off the bat is that it's in 3/4. And the second thing is that it used double stops. So every first beat had 2 notes being plucked at once. That's what a double stop is. And when it got to the ending, it had a non-diatonic chord. So we're playing in the key of C and we're putting a B flat major into the ending, which does not fit into that key. And that was what created that wonder sound, that whimsical sound quality. And I really liked throwing that non-diatonic chord into this composition. And so those were the 2 elements that I really liked about that tune, was that it had a playful melody and it had this wonder chord, which just sounds so cool. So I thought it would be an interesting idea to write a song that was kind of a continuation based off those 2 ideas, or those 2 themes, playful melody, and then incorporate that wonder chord. And so when you listen to Wonder Part 2, you can hear off the bat that it's not copy and paste. There's no double stop going on, it's just single notes. And we're playing in 4/4 this time. But again, a very simple and catchy little melody. And later on in the tune, it actually revisits that B flat to kind of connect Wonder Part 1 into Wonder Part 2. So that's what I've got for you guys for a songwriting approach, is to take a song that you've already written and try to write a continuation of it using common themes that really stuck out or defined the first song. And what you may find too is that you may take that first song and you may actually just rearrange it or rewrite it, and then that first song could kind of be considered the rough draft that becomes the final draft. So, it might morph into just one song becoming the final song. Who knows? Or maybe you get 2 songs. Oh, kind of a cool idea. So I thought I'd share that with you guys, for those of you who like to arrange or write tunes. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this lesson. So in this lesson, we're going to be learning the entire song. Now, if you want to get the tabs to print off and follow along with, you can do so by clicking this link right here or going to the site, rockclass101.com, and doing a search for Wonder Part 2. Now, also on that page will be the on-screen tab viewer. So this is a really cool feature where you can hit play, you can watch the tab scroll across in real time, you can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish. Just a really great asset for learning this song that much easier. All right, guys, so before we jump into learning how to play this, couple things we want to talk about. First off, we're going to be counting rhythms as we go throughout this tune. So if you're new to understanding rhythmic notation, I'll put a link in the description box below to our introductory lesson on that. But honestly, there's no better way to learn how rhythm and timing connect than by learning to read standard notation. Now, with that said, this is also a song, as we've talked about in the intro, it's a very catchy song. So if you can sing it, you can play it. So you can also approach it by playing by ear. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is our right hand approach for finger picking. It's a very simple tune to play, and most of it falls into being a 3-finger approach. So with our right hand, that means that the thumb would get string 4, the thumb would also get string 3, index finger would get string 2, and middle finger would get string 1. So if I play just that first part, you can see it in action with the right hand. Now you do see one change though. When I get to that little melody run on the A string, I'm going to be using an alternate finger picking approach called piccato. And that's just a fancy way to say that I'm literally going second, first, second, first, second, first. So you're just alternating, but you're leading with the middle finger. So if you're new to that, you can just do the A string open and get comfortable with that. But we'll be using that piccato picking for all of those melody runs that fall onto the A string. So I'll point it out when we get there. And if you want a more in-depth mechanics breakdown on the right hand for piccato picking, then check out this lesson, which is called La Gitanita. It's a flamenco tune. Super cool, super fun to play, and it's probably at the same level as this tune. It's like a seasoned beginner knocking on intermediate door. So let's jump into learning how to play it. We're going to kick off with theme number 1, and I'll play just the first part and then we'll break it down and learn it. Okay, so there's what our first couple measures sound like, but let's start with just the first measure by itself, which sounds like this. So the first thing is, off the bat, we can hear that it's straight 8th note rhythm, so keeping it even throughout the entire measure. And all we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking the pinky finger, we're going to put it on the 10th fret of string number 1, and we're playing out of just this voicing of a C. And what we're doing is we're literally just bouncing between playing the open C and then that 10th fret of string 1, and then the open G, and then the 10th fret of string 1. So you're literally just going to double that. So you have C and then string 1, G and then string 1. And again, C, string 1, G, string 1, right? So putting it together, you have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Very, very simple. So let's try that one together. Here we go. 3, 4. Okay. Going into measure 2, here's where we have that piccato run. So measure 2 sounds like this. Okay, so starting off where we left off, pinky was on the 10th fret. So we're going to start this measure by playing the open C. That's going to ring out over the little piccato run. So we're going to go 10, 8, 7. So all on string 1. So you're going to use pinky, second, first. So we have 10, 8, 7. Remember with piccato, the middle finger leads. So you're going to go second finger, first finger, second finger. Okay, so you have O, 10, 8, 7. Now rhythmically, we're playing 16th notes here. So we have 1 and a 2, 1 and a 2. So a little bit of a quicker rhythm, right? Bam ba da da. But after that, it just goes back to the vamp of the 8th note rhythm. So together, again, this measure. Okay, so try to get that stuck in your head. Bum ba da 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 da. Right, it's very catchy. So let's start from the top. We have the open C. Then we're going to go 10, 8, 7. Now when you get to 7, just keep the index finger there. It's going to stay anchored. And you're going to vamp between the open G and then the 7th fret of string 1, open G, 7 of string 1, and open G. So if you put it together, it makes a little bit more sense in the context. Right? So we have O, 10, 8, 7, O, 7, O, 7, O. Right? That's where it starts to make a lot of sense. So let's try it together really slow. We have O, 10, 8, 7, O, 7, O, 7, O. So let's go at that speed. So here we go. 3, 4. Cool. One more time. 3, 4. Nice. And if we backtrack, let's try that first into the second measure. So all together we have 3, 4. Nice. So one tip too that you can work on is putting a little bit of vibrato onto that first string. Just gives it a little bit of character. And the vibrato is just going to be a slight up and down movement. Now, if you're new to vibrato, I did an extremely in-depth lesson on multiple ways to do vibrato, so you can click that link right there. I'll put the link in the description box below, but it teaches you many ways to do vibrato to make it very subtle or to make it very pronounced. And in this case, I think subtle is the way to go. All right, so those two measures, they're just going to get repeated 2 times in a row. So let's try that. So we're going to play first and second measure, and then again. That gives us 4 bars total. So let's see if we can boost the tempo a little bit, and it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and... Cool, so there's the first 4 bars of theme 1. Going into the next section, here's what measure 3 sounds like. So a bit of a finger frenzy, especially getting up to this second half of it. You can see that it used all 4 fingers. So we're going to talk about that and break it down. But the first thing is that we need to recognize a couple things. First off, rhythmically, all 8th notes, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... So keep that in mind. Everything lasts the same amount of time as you play this measure. And then the second thing is that you have the same chord shape that starts here and moves up the neck. So this chord shape is going to be the middle finger playing the 2nd fret of string 3 and the ring finger playing the 2nd fret of string 1. So just pluck both of those notes for right now. And this is just playing out of a G chord. And we're going to move it up the neck. We're going to move this exact same shape up to the 7th fret. So that means that the middle is now on 7 on string 3 and the ring finger is 7 on string 1. So you can pluck those two. We're playing out of a G6 right here. So one thing you want to practice is that transition going from 2-2 to 7-7. One thing I noticed that beginners struggle a lot with when they take chord shapes and they move it up the neck is that oftentimes when you move it up the neck, the fingers fall into different frets, kind of like what you're seeing right there. So you want to practice moving the hand shape up, but keeping the fingers in the same frets. It's a lot harder than it sounds or it looks. And again, I noticed a lot during my 11 years of teaching one-on-one lessons that was an area that folks struggled a lot with. So definitely practice this little transition. You can put it into a timing frame, kind of like pluck string 3 and 1, pluck that on beat 1, and then move up to 7, 7, pluck that on beat 3. So you would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And another thing you can do too is keep your eye on the prize. Remember, the ukes, most of them have dots. Some start on the 5th fret, some start on the 3rd. Mine starts on the 3rd, but I have 3, 5, 7. So my 3rd dot is the 7th fret. If I keep my eye on the prize, then I'm just going to move my hand till it meets my eye. So don't watch your hand go up and back down, right? Keep your eye on the prize, and that ensures that you move to the correct fret each time. So work on that transition because it's a bit tricky. So to play this measure, we're going to start with just the middle finger down on that 2nd fret of string 3. Play that note, play the open A, and then take that ring, put it down on the 2nd fret of string 1, and you're going to pluck that with the open G, and then use the pinky to play 3 on string 1. So I have string 3, open A, string 4 open, plus the 2nd fret of string 1, and then the 3rd fret of string 1. Cool, so nice little walk up. So remember, all 8th note, 1 and 2 and. So let's try just that, 3 and 4 and. Cool. At this point, lift the pinky up, move that shape up to the 7th fret, right? So both fingers are down, sev, sev. So for the second half, we're going to go string 3, string 1, and then at this point, we're going to lift the ring finger up, and we're going to put the index finger down on the 5th fret of string 1. Notice the middle finger stays constant. We want this note to just ring out and sustain. So when this is down on 5 on string 1, you're going to pluck the open G with it, and then take the pinky and play 8 on string 2. So again, when you move up for the second half, move that shape up. You're going to play sev on string 3, sev on string 1, lift the ring finger up, put the index down on 5 on string 1, play the open G with it, and then use the pinky to play 8 on string 2. You could use the ring finger if you want as well. If that feels better, use the ring finger. It's up to you. But again, the key thing that's the most difficult here is that transition. Right? And keep in mind all 8th notes. Okay, so let's try just the second half, starting on beat 3. 1 and 2 and. Nice. Okay, and let's backtrack. Let's try the entire measure. 3 and 4 and. Awesome. Now going into our 4th measure, it's going to sound like this. And notice that the first half is identical to measure 3. Okay, so let's break down what's happening. So the first half, the same. So back to string 3, 2nd fret, open A, plucking both 4 and string 1 together, and then the 3rd fret. So everything's identical. So all we have to do is learn the second half, starting on beat 3. So what you're going to do is you're going to move the middle finger up to the 4th fret of string 3. Those other 2 fingers lift up, of course. And what we're going to do is we're going to pluck string 3, which is the 4th fret, plus the open A. So you pluck those 2 together, then take the index, put it down on the 3rd fret of string 2, play the open E, so you lift it up, and then play the open G. So very easy, right? So we have 4 on string 3, play that with the open A, index goes down to the 3rd fret of string 2, lift that up, play the open E, and then the open G. And again, all 8th notes. So we have 3 and 4 and. Okay, so let's try just the second half. Start on beat 3. 1 and 2 and. Nice. Remember, the first half is the same. Okay, so the entire 4th measure. 3 and 4 and. Nice. So that gives us the conclusion, the entirety of theme number 1. So let's do this. Let's backtrack. Let's try 3 into 4, and then we'll try everything for theme 1. So bar 3 into 4. Here we go. 3 and 4 and... Okay, and if we try the entirety, so theme number 1, remember that those 2 bars repeat, so we're going to play them 4 times. So here we go. 3, 4. Nice. So that gives us our first theme. So let's go ahead and move on to theme number 2. So theme number 2 is going to start pretty much the same. So let me play the first couple measures. So this is 5 and 6 if you're following with the tab. So what do you notice? We have a continuation of the melody at the end of that 6th measure. So the 5th measure is identical to the first. So you're just vamping on the C and the 10th fret of string 1, and then to the G and the 10 on string 1. So all that's the same. So if we look at measure 6, we have identical first half. 1 and a 2 and. So starting on beat 3 is when we introduce the new melody notes. So let's take a look at what's happening there. So to finish up this measure, it's going to sound like this. Okay, so we have a cool little melodic run all on the A string, all using piccato picking. And there's a couple fingering options that we can do to play this. I think one that most people will feel comfortable with is going to be sliding down with the index finger. So we're going to start on the 5th fret for beat 3, and then use the middle finger to play 7, and then the ring finger to play 8, and then go down to the 3rd fret and use the index finger for that, and then the ring for 5. So you have 5, 7, 8, 3, 5. Okay, so that's option number 1. 1st, 2nd, 3rd finger, 1st, 3rd. Option number 2, you could use 1st, 3rd, 4th, and then again 1st, 3rd. So try both ways out and pick the one that feels most comfortable for you. But the key thing here that's really important is the rhythm. So for beat 3, we're doing 16th notes, 3 E and then for beat 4, 8th notes, 4 and. So we have 3 E and 4 and. And again, if we put it into context, it makes a lot of sense. So, right, da ba da 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 ba da da ba. It's very catchy. La da 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 da. So get that stuck in your head. But from a rhythmic perspective, 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's what we have. So approach it either way by counting the rhythms or singing them. But just get that rhythm stuck in your head. So let's see if we can try just the second half. We have 5, 7, 8, 3, 5. But let's go a little bit slower. So we'll go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, one more time. 1 and 2 and. Okay, connecting it. Let's try the entire 6 measure. 3 and 4 and. Cool. And if we backtrack, let's try 5 into 6. Remember, 5 is identical to 1. 3, 4. Nice. And if we look at the next 2 measures, there's only one difference. So let me play through it. The last 2 notes. So measure 7 is identical to measure 5, which was identical to measure 1. So just vamping on the 10th fret and the open strings. When you get to measure 8, all of that's the same, but the change happens, instead of playing 3-5 for beat 4 end, you're going to play 3-2. Okay, so that's the only difference. So let's throw that change in, and let's try just measured 8 by itself. 3, 4. Okay, and you can see that I'm finishing up with just the middle to the index finger. So let's try that one more time, and I'll go a little bit slower. So 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Nice. Now, this takes us into our next little kind of, it's still theme 2, but it's a kind of a change in feel. But before we jump into that 9th and the 10th bar, let's do this. Let's try 5, 6, 7, and 8 together. So here we go. 3 and 4 and... Cool. So going into the next 2 measures, they're actually going to get repeated twice. So just like we saw for measure 1 and 2, got repeated 2 times. So keep that in mind. Once you learn it once, you've got it for the repeat. So here's what the next 2 sound like. And to me, this part of theme 2 kind of has a bit of a somber sound to it, even though it's not a super sad sounding thing, but it has a little bit of a somber vibe to it. And then when we get into the next theme, it has an uplifting sound to it. So it's kind of interesting going from a little bit of a somber, sadder sound to the uplifting to resolve us back to the first theme. But anyways, before we get ahead of ourselves, here's what the next 2 sound like. Okay, and it gets repeated again, so... Alright, so get that stuck in your head. Very catchy. Alright, so very little catchy couple bars that get repeated. So we're starting this section off with an F chord, but the big difference here is that we actually don't even need the 4th string. So you're just using the index finger on the 1st fret of string 2. So with this measure, we have all 8th notes, and we're going to pluck the 1st and the 2nd string. So just go ahead and pluck that, and then we're going to follow up with the open C, the open A, and then back to the open C. So it gives us the first half. We have 1 and 2 and. Okay, so let's try that together. 3, 4. Nice. Now for this second half, starting on beat 3, what I like to do to vary the sound is to introduce a little bit of a strum technique. So instead of plucking the 1st and the 2nd string again, which sounds like that, I can vary the tonal color by just doing a strum. So start with this. Start with just strumming with the nail of the index finger down, right? If you listen to the sound difference between the strum versus the pluck, the strum has a bit of a harsher and a louder attack to it, while this pluck has a softer and a warmer attack to it. So it's kind of a simple trick that you can do through playing arrangements or songwriting or anything, is you can vary the right hand attack to get a different tonal coloring out of the notes. So you can hear that this section just repeats. Right, so beat 1 and beat 3, they're identical, so that's what I mean by repeat. Right, if I pluck beat 1 and beat 3, it has the exact same sound, but if I strum one of them, it gives me a little tiny subtle change, right? It's almost like putting sprinkles on ice cream, right? Ice cream is great by itself, but if you put sprinkle, it's a tiny little change. Not a huge difference, but a tiny change that gives it a little pop. Now, I'm doing a flick approach as well, so you can see that I'm not just strumming down on those 2 strings. Instead, I'm strumming the 2nd string and using my middle finger to pluck the first string. So it's kind of like a hybrid. And this is a strum technique that usually I use for four string chords. But it works great too for less than 4 strings. And it's actually a technique that I get asked a lot about. I get a lot of emails or forum posts or YouTube comments on what exactly I'm doing. So I'll put a link in the description box below. This song, which is called Orally, I'll put the timestamp where I broke down the technique of this flick strum approach. And it's kind of a cool way. It really makes the A string, if your melody note falls on the A string, it makes it pop instead of just a basic strum. So you can hear just that A string just has a little bit of sparkle to it. Okay, so that's what I'm doing for B3. I'm just going to be doing a little strum approach for that. And to finish up the rest of the measure, we're going to play the 2nd fret of string 1 with the ring finger, play the open A, and then just take it and put it on the 3rd fret of string 2. So the second half of this, we have strumming the bottom half of the F, 2nd fret of string 1, lift up, play the open A, and then 3rd fret of string 2. So it sounds like that, all 8th notes. Again, if we put the whole measure into context, we had pluck, 3, 1, 3, strum, 2nd, open, 3rd fret of string 2. Okay, so together. Okay, and if you and I try together, here we go. 3, 4. Nice. So again, the big takeaway for this measure is just getting a tonal color difference for beat 1 and beat 3 by doing the pluck versus the strum attack. Okay, so going into our next measure, measure 10, it's very simple, sounds like this. So we have 1 and 2 and 3. So very, very easy. You can see it's straight out of the basic C major chord. So you're gonna pluck 3 and 2, and then play string 3 open, string 2 open, string 4 open, and then the 3rd fret of string 1. So we have 1 and 2 and 3. Let's try together. 3, 4. Nice. If we backtrack, let's try F into C. Here we go. 3, 4. Cool. So remember, those 2 bars are going to get repeated. So just like we did for measure 1 and 2. So we're just going to play those 4 times. So let's give that a shot. 3, 4. Again. Nice. So that will actually conclude theme number 2. So if we backtrack and play all of theme 2, this is what we get. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice. And that takes us into our uplifting. So those last couple measures, they were the ones that I said were kind of like a somber sound. So listen to the first couple for theme 3, and you can hear how it just transforms it into this hopeful kind of sound. Okay, so I lied, I played through the entire theme, but you can really hear how it connects from the end of theme 2, that somber. Going into this hopeful. Really hopeful sound, right? And then when it got here, we had that wonder chord, right? That chord that connects wonder part 1 to Wonder Part 2, right? So that same exact little sequence and that, or you can call it a phrase, appeared in Wonder Part 1, and it again appears in Wonder Part 2, in essence connecting this tune to its father, I guess we could call it that. So let's go ahead and break down theme number 3. It's a little bit trickier than the other ones, but it's not super duper hard. But let's take it bar by bar. It's gonna be the best way to learn it. So we're gonna start with the first bar of this theme. So it goes from an F chord to a G5. So let's take a look at those two chords really quick. So the F chord we already know, it's the stock F, but again, we're not using the 4th string at all. So we're literally just gonna be playing from 3 down. And then when we go to G5, this is one we've probably played quite a bit. So to finger this chord, we have the open G, but we're starting with the index on the 2nd fret of string 3, middle finger plays the 3rd fret of string 2, and pinky is 5 on string 1. So just get comfortable going from the F to the G5. Now, playing wise, you can see straight up all 8th notes. So we have 1 and 2 and. So we're going to just play the first half. 1 and 2 and. So start with plucking 1 and 2, playing the open C, and then we can use the ring finger to play the 2nd fret on string 1, and then the pinky finger to play the 3rd fret on string 1. So I have 1 and 2 and. Now you can use these two fingers, 3rd, pinky, or you can use 2nd, 3rd. Try both out. Pick the one that feels most comfortable for you. But if you use 3rd and 4th, then you're going to slide up with the pinky and be a little bit easier to get into position for the G5, right? So you probably want to practice going into the G5 chord. So try both fingers out and see which one's a little bit easier. You can see it takes more effort with the left hand if I go 2nd, 3rd versus it's a lot easier to jump into the G5. Okay, so that's what I would recommend, but either one does work. So when we go into the G5, we're going to be plucking 4, 2, and 1 together. And then you're going to play string 3, and at this point we can use the ring finger to play underneath the middle finger. So it's going to be the 3rd fret of string 1, and then pinky plays 5 on string 1. So I have pluck, 3rd string, then use the ring finger, gotta lift the pinky up, play 3, and then 5. So in the context of the movement, it looks like that. So this is probably one of the trickiest ones, like I said. So starts off pretty easy, 1 and 2 and, go into the G5, pluck 4, 2, and 1, play string 3, lift the pinky up, put the ring underneath the middle, 3rd fret of string 1, pinky back down, 5 on string 1. Okay, so just hit pause on this video and practice just that. That's going to take a little bit of work because it's a bit of a finger frenzy. But when you have it down, we can try it together. So we have 3, 4. Right? And keeping that rhythm steady, 8th notes, that will make it easier, so it puts the focus on our left hand as opposed to what the rhythm's doing. Okay, going into the next measure, so we're playing out of an F major 7. It's going to sound like this. Okay, so this chord, partial bar chord, so anytime we're doing full bar chords covering all 4 strings or partial bar chords covering 3 or 2 strings, it's really important that you have proper left hand form not only in front of the neck, but also what's happening behind the neck. So I'll put a link to our lesson on proper left hand form in the description box below, and it covers bar chords, but it also covers a couple ways to do basic chords, so if you want to recap on the basics as well, or the fundamentals. So going into this chord, we're going to lay flat on the 5th fret, strings 1, 2, and 3, add your ring to 7 on string 1. And for this we can do a strum down. I think that's a cool way to vary it. Again, I'm going to use that flick and strum approach that we talked about earlier, just to make that melody note, that 7 on string 1, pop a little bit. So I'm going to strum, then I'm going to lift the ring finger up, play 5 on string 1, which is barred, and then use the pinky to play 8 and then 7. on string 2. So I have, but rhythmically, 1 and 2 and keep it all steady eighths. Okay, so let's just try that. 3, 4. Nice. At this point, lift the ring up. You're going to pluck 3 and 2, still barred, so stay anchored the entire time. You can add a little bit of vibrato. This time the movement is left to right, not up and down. So again, if you need to recap how to do vibrato, it's a little bit different when you do vibrato with chords versus single notes. So definitely check out that lesson in the description box below. But I think it's cool to add a little bit of vibrato for beat 3. It just makes it pop a little bit. So I'm going to pluck for beat 3, 3 and 2, and then play string 1, and then again, 8, 7. So you can see that it's just a repeating of end, 2, end, 4, end. Right? It's the same little phrase. Right? So it's kind of cool. It gives it a repetitive and catchy sound. So together, let's see if we can try it all the way, guys. Here we go. 3, 4. Nice. And if we backtrack, let's try that first into the second measure for theme number 3. So we have 3, 4. Cool. And let's slow it down a little bit because I know that's super fast. So one more time. 3 and 4 and. Cool. And here's the cool thing. The next measure is actually identical to the first measure. So you're just going to go back and do F to G5. So everything's identical. So let's look at this second to last measure, which is our wonder chord. Okay, so it sounds like that. So we have 1, 2, and 3, and. Okay, so let's break down what's happening. Rhythmically, there's a little trick at the end. So this is a B flat 5 we're playing out of. So make that same partial bar, flat on 5, strings 1, 2, and 3. Add the middle finger to 6 on string 2 and pinky 8 on string 1. And I like to do a little bit of a raschiato strum. So it's a 4-finger barrel roll strum, but it sounds really cool. It really makes the chord pop. So remember that flamenco lesson I linked at the beginning of this tune, La Gitanita? Check out that lesson because it not only teaches picado, but it also teaches this 4-finger strum attack, which is really cool. So I'm going to throw that in for this part, just to give it a little pop. So go ahead and strum that chord. So we have 5, 6, 8. And that's going to be beat 1. Then on beat 2, we're going to lift the pinky up. We're going to play 7, 5. Remember, barred. So strum, 7, 5. Then take the pinky, put it on 8 on string 2. Pluck that with the open G. Now, here's the kicker. This is going to get held out for beat and a half. 3 and 4, end. So on the end of 4 is when you play 5 on string 1. So the thing is that this finger key stays anchored the entire time as that bar. Right, so that's the hard thing about this. Partial bar, keep pressure down, entire bar. So we have 1, 2, and 3, and 4, end. Okay, so let's see if we can try that together slow. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Right, so don't forget to hit 5 on string 1 for the last note. One more time, a little bit faster. 3 and 4 and. Awesome, and it's just going to resolve to the basic C. So you can use maybe the middle finger or the ring finger or the first finger, so it really does not matter too much. I think the middle is the easiest, but that's me. So that's where you're going to end it, and there's a little pickup, but we'll talk about that in a second. So let's see if we can try this. Let's see if we can try just that B flat 5 going into the C. So here we go. 3, 4. Nice. Now if we backtrack, let's try all of theme number 3. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 measures together. Here we go. 3, 4. Now, let's talk about that little pickup. So it's a chromatic run. Chromatic means that we're moving by half step. And a chromatic can be either up, like we're doing, or down, descending. So we're just going to go up chromatically. We're going to go 7, 8, 9. We're going to piccato pick it. And that naturally leads us into our outro, which is the first 2 measures of the tune repeated until you fade out. So fade out just means to gradually start to play softer. So before we tackle the little outro, let's just try that ending. So 7, 8, 9. Now that's going to happen on beat 4. So if you think of where we left off on the C chord. So we have 1, 2, 3, da da da. Right, so on beat 4. 4E end, that's when you're going to do that run. So let's try it from there. Let's try from the C, and then we'll try that run. So here we go. 3, 4, C, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. So the outro, guys, is just the first 2 measures of the tune. You can play it a few times, but start to fade on the repeat. So when you play it the 3rd and the 4th measure, just start to gradually softer and softer. Right? And it fades out just like that. So that's our entire song, guys. And this I think the coolest thing about this is that it introduced another way to approach songwriting. And I just love having different tools that I can pull from to make songwriting less daunting. Because it's really scary if someone says, hey, why don't you write a song? And your first thought is like, I write it from scratch, I pull a song out of thin air. It's kind of a very scary thought. So it's cool to have a few ideas that you can pull from. Don't forget that I linked that blues tune and the classical tune in the description box below. They both introduced a completely different way, a different approach that you can use for songwriting as well. So if you want some more ideas on how to songwrite, check that out. Plus, we do have a full-length songwriting course, which actually deep dives into music theory. So if you want to learn a little bit about the theory on songwriting, then I don't know if I have cards left. I might not. I'll put the link to the songwriting course in the description box below. Anyways, that's what I've got for you for this week's lesson, guys. So I do want to remind you, if you want to get the tabs to print off, keep for your records, you can do so by clicking this link. I do have a card for that. Or you can go to the site, rockclass101.com, do a search for Wonder Part 2. And don't forget, on that page is also the on-screen interactive tab player, so you can hit play, watch the tab scroll across in real time. You can highlight bars, loop sections, slow it down, all that fun jazz. So guys, again, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.